The anatomical theater of human weaknesses. Welcome to the anatomical theater of human weaknesses. Leave your illusions about mutual respect and social contract at the threshold. The world in which you live is not a co-working space for friends. It is a biological arena. If you do not control the space controls you. Your kindness? It is merely an absence of fangs. Your politeness? A signal that you are afraid of conflict. Most people spend their lives subconsciously seeking someone to whom they can submit, in order to relieve themselves of the burden of responsibility for their own survival. They seek a leader, a predator whose authority is not subject to doubt. Today, we begin to dissect the mechanisms of fear and dominance. I will teach you to create an aura that makes those around you fall silent even before you open your mouth. We will analyze 5 techniques that transform you from a statistical unit into a constant that is impossible to ignore. Prepare yourself. We are beginning the first stage of the deconstruction of your old personality. Chapter 1. Economy of Movement and Predatory Immobility 1. Phase. Collision. A penthouse party in Manhattan. The air is saturated with the scent of expensive perfume, selective whiskey, and a faint ozone from the air conditioners. Julian, a tall man with an aggressive jaw and a habit of interrupting interlocutors, stands in the center of a circle. He is a typical alpha imitator. He laughs loudly, gestures actively. His hands are constantly in motion. He adjusts his cufflinks, pats someone on the shoulder, checks his telephone. Arthur enters the hall. He does not hurry. His movements are sparse, almost mechanistic. He does not look around in search of familiar faces, an instinctive gesture of seeking protection. He stops at the edge of the group where Julian dominates. Julian notices the new player. He decides to mark his territory. "Oh, Arthur, you have finally emerged from your cave. We were just discussing that your latest forecasts are pure esotericism." Julian makes a wide, expressive gesture with his hand, invading the personal space of Arthur. Arthur does not withdraw. He does not blink. He stands absolutely still. His hands are calmly lowered along his body. He does not shift from foot to foot. A pause hangs between them. 10 seconds. 15. He sees how Julian's pupils dilate. The rhythm of Julian's breathing falters. He is waiting for excuses or a retaliatory joke. But Arthur remains silent, studying Julian's face as if it were not a person, but an interesting graph of falling stocks. "Are you finished?" Arthur says in a quiet, steady voice, without changing his posture. At this moment, a counter clicks in his head. The amplitude of his gestures betrays a high level of cortisol. He is trying to fill the silence because silence is a threat to him. Julian falters. His next phrase sounds quieter. He involuntarily takes a step back, increasing the distance. Arthur's aura filled the vacuum that Julian created with his fuss. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. What we saw is a collision between dynamic fuss and static dominance. The biology of dominance. In the wild, a predator, a lion, a tiger, is always more economical in movements than a prey. A deer constantly twitches and looks around. Its muscles are in hypertonus. Superfluous movements are biological noise signaling insecurity and readiness for flight. The neurochemistry of fear. When you stand motionless and silent in response to aggression, the brain of the opponent falls into a state of cognitive dissonance. His limbic system expects a standard reaction: fight or flight. Your calmness is interpreted as a hidden threat. The opponent's brain begins to generate questions. Why is he not afraid? What does he know that I do not know? What resources does he possess? This instantly provokes a release of cortisol in the attacker. Eye contact. Arthur uses the cold stare technique, focusing on the bridge of the nose or on one eye without blinking. This suppresses the mirror neurons of the interlocutor, making him feel like an object of observation rather than a subject of communication. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. In 1975, psychologist Edward Tronick conducted the famous still face experiment. Initially, he studied infants, but the mechanisms identified by him also work in adult social primates. When a mother abruptly stopped reacting to her child, maintaining an absolutely emotionless face, the infant transitioned from attempts to attract attention to a state of deep stress and panic within minutes. In the world of adults, the still face is a tool of power, the refusal of emotional mirroring. When you do not smile in response to a polite smile or do not frown in response to aggression, destroys the social protocol of the opponent. You become a black hole that absorbs their energy without giving anything in return. 4. Phase. Counterstrike. Your task is to implement lesson number 1, the principle of minimal response. To create an aura of power, begin with physical self-control. 1. Freeze. In any tense situation, eliminate micro-movements. Do not touch your face, do not adjust your clothing, and do not move objects on the table. Become a statue. 2. Hold the pause. After you have been asked a question or challenged, wait 3 seconds before answering. This shows that you are processing information rather than reacting to a stimulus. 3. Vocal control. Lower your timbre. Speak on the exhale. A high voice is the voice of a subordinate. A low and monotonous voice is the voice of one who dictates terms. Rule: the one who moves more loses. The one who speaks more is making excuses. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. Arthur feels how the soles of his shoes grow into the cold marble of the floor. He senses the weight of the air, heavy, damp from the breath of dozens of people. But in his personal space, with a radius of 1 meter, an Arctic cold reigns. The sound of a broken glass somewhere in the corner does not make him flinch. He sees a drop of sweat rolling down Julian's temple. The world around turns into slow motion, where only his will is the sole fixed point. Chapter 2. Information vacuum and the trap of servile confession. 1. Phase. Collision. A restaurant in London's Mayfair. Dimmed light, the clinking of crystal, and whispers that cost more than the annual rent of your apartment. Mark sits at a corner table. Before him is Sarah, a woman who is accustomed to winning any social duels with the help of manipulations and a cascade of words. She's trying to clarify the situation after Mark intercepted the initiative in a general circle of friends. Listen, Mark, I feel that there is some misunderstanding between us. She leans forward. Her pupils are dilated. She's looking for confirmation of her power. I did not want to hurt you then. It is just that you were acting too detached. You surely understand that I was simply caring about the climate in the company? Mark does not answer. He carefully cuts his steak. His knife glides through the fibers of the meat with surgical precision. He puts a piece in his mouth, chews slowly, and only then raises his eyes to Sarah. He does not smile. He does not nod. He simply watches. Mark notes. Her right eyelid twitched slightly. She has started to speak faster, a classic reaction to the absence of feedback. She is losing control over the script. She fears my silence more than my words. Sarah begins to fidget in her chair. You are not angry, are you? That would be foolish. Everyone knows how rational you are. I even told James that you were probably just tired. Mark continues to be silent. He takes a sip of red wine, lingering his gaze on Sarah over the rim of the glass. 30 seconds pass. For Sarah, this is an eternity. The vacuum created by Mark becomes unbearable. She needs to fill it. Actually, Sarah's voice breaks an octave higher. I did not want to say that at all. It was Emma's idea. She asked me to somehow feel out the situation. She has just betrayed an ally whom she did not intend to betray. Emma's? Mark asks quietly. Just one word. Yes. She is afraid that you will take her place on the board. God, why am I saying this? Mark internally smirks. The fish is on the hook. She has gutted herself just so that I would stop looking at her that way. Continue, he says, plunging back into icy calmness. He knows that now she will tell everything, just to receive at least some sign from him that everything is fine. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Mark applied the strategy of the information vacuum. This is the highest form of social dominance. Horror vacui, fear of emptiness. The human brain is programmed to search for patterns and complete cycles. When a communication cycle remains open, a question is asked, but there is no answer. The subject experiences increasing anxiety. To reduce the stress level, the brain forces the person to speak. The more Sarah speaks, the more information she gives away, and the weaker her position becomes. Cognitive suppression. When you are silent, the opponent begins to project. He attributes his own fears to your silence. Sarah fears betrayal. Therefore, she decided that Mark is angry because of betrayal, and she began to justify herself before any accusation was presented to her. Neurochemistry. Sarah has cortisol and adrenaline spiking in her blood. Her prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, shuts down under the pressure of the amygdala. Mark remains in the cold zone of dopamine expectation. He controls the situation without expending resources. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger developed the theory of cognitive dissonance. One of his experiments showed that people are ready to change their beliefs and give away hidden information just to eliminate internal contradiction. Later, in studies of interrogations, the Reed technique, it was proven that strategic silence of the investigator works better than torture or shouting. The suspect perceives silence as evidence that the investigator already knows everything. In the case with Sarah, Mark's silence worked as a mirror. She saw her own guilt in it and began to treat it with self-exposure. She gave up Emma not because she wanted to, but because Mark's silence squeezed her throat. 4. Phase. Counter-strike. Your task is to master lesson number 2. Silence is the space where your enemy hangs himself. Instructions for action. 1. The 3-0. Technique. To a provocative question or an attempt at manipulation, respond with obstruction, physical immobility. Observation, a minimum of 10 seconds of direct gaze. Orientation, repeat the opponent's last word with an interrogative intonation. 2. Do not provide confirmation. Do not nod. Do not say, uh-huh. Do not make an understanding face. Be a blank slate. Let them guess what you are thinking. 3. Compulsion to verbosity. If you want to find out the truth, simply remain silent after the person has finished speaking. In 90% of cases, he will add details that he originally wanted to hide in order to smooth over the awkwardness. Rule. Information is the blood of power. The one who is silent accumulates it. The one who speaks is bleeding out. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. Mark feels the cold stem of the glass. The wine in it seems thick and heavy, like mercury. The smell of the steak mixes with the aroma of Sarah's expensive perfume, which now seems cloying, the scent of fear. The noise of the restaurant merges into a monotonous hum, from which Mark extracts only the intermittent breathing of his victim. He perceives himself not as a participant in the dinner, but as an observer behind the glass of an aquarium. He is above this noise. He is silence itself. Chapter 3. False vulnerability and the trap for the predator. 1. Phase: collision. A private charity evening in a Soho loft. The walls are decorated with minimalist art that costs more than someone's life. The air smells of old wood, expensive tobacco, and ambition. Liam, a man whose calmness usually borders on arrogance, looks human today. His shoulders are slightly lowered. He adjusts his tie more often than usual, and a barely noticeable uncertainty shows in his movements. Oliver, an ambitious investor who has long been looking for a reason to displace Liam on the board of directors of a shared fund, notices this instantly. For a scavenger like Oliver, the scent of weakness is a signal to attack. They stand by a panoramic window. The lights of New York behind the glass seem like a scattering of crushed diamonds. A difficult quarter, Liam? Oliver approaches closely, violating the intimate zone. He speaks louder than necessary, attracting the attention of a couple of standing shareholders. I heard that your latest investments in green tech, how should I put it, did not live up to expectations. Liam takes a deep breath. His fingers tremble slightly as he places his glass on the table. We all make mistakes, Oliver. In his head. Swallow the bait, you non-entity. Your ego is now shouting louder than your logic. You see what I have allowed you to see. Perhaps I overestimated my strength in this sector. Now I am, let us say, in the process of restructuring assets. Oliver beams. His dopamine system is overloaded with the anticipation of victory. Restructuring. He smirks. Actually, he thinks, he is broken. It is time to finish him. I will now extract a confession of insolvency from him and call a board meeting tomorrow. Listen, as a friend, if you need cash, I could buy out your share in the London project. At face value, of course. Purely to save your reputation. Liam drops his eyes for a moment, portraying a struggle with himself. At face value? But that is robbery, Oliver. Although, he makes a pause, forcing Oliver to lean forward. Perhaps I have no choice. Shall we discuss the details tomorrow morning? Let us say at 9. Tomorrow might be too late, Oliver presses, feeling how blood pounds in his temples from excitement. Let us sign a preliminary memorandum right now, on a napkin. There are witnesses. Liam slowly straightens up. His shoulders broaden, and his gaze instantly turns into an icy scalpel. The uncertainty evaporates like mist under the sun. On a napkin? His voice now sounds low and dangerous. Oliver, you have just, in the presence of 2 witnesses, offered to buy out assets, knowing about my crisis, at an undervalued price. This is a classic violation of fiduciary duties and an attempt at a corporate raid. My lawyer, who is standing 3 meters away from us, has recorded every word. Now I have every ground to demand your exclusion from the board for an attempt to destabilize the fund. Oliver turns pale. His triumph turned into ash in a second. But you said, I looked that way so that you would manifest your true nature. Liam cuts him off. Thank you for your candor. Tomorrow at 9, I am waiting not for you, but for your letter of resignation. 2. Phase: psychological X-ray. Liam used the technique of strategic surrender. The effect of expectancy dominance. When an opponent sees signs of weakness, trembling hands, an uncertain voice, his brain switches from risk analysis mode to pursuit of prey mode. In this state, critical thinking is suppressed by a dopamine surge. Oliver stopped analyzing the situation and began simply realizing his greed. False vulnerability. This is a demonstration of a controlled flaw. You throw a bone to the opponent, information or an emotion that he can use against you. But this bone is poisoned. You yourself chose the place and time of the attack. Biology. Liam provoked a predator reaction in Oliver, who sees a wounded victim. At the moment of the strike, a predator experiences a narrowing of the field of vision, tunnel vision. Oliver stopped noticing the surroundings, the lawyer, the witnesses, and the legal risks. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. In social psychology, there exists the concept of the pratfall effect, described by Elliot Aronson. The experiment showed that a competent person making a small mistake becomes more attractive and inspires more trust. However, in the hands of a strategist, this effect turns into a weapon. If you always seem too perfect, people are on guard. But as soon as you show a small, controlled crack, they relax. They think they have found your limit. At this moment, they become maximally vulnerable. False vulnerability is an invitation to an attack on your terms. 4. Phase, counterstrike. Your task is to implement lesson number 3. Never be a monolith. Instructions for application. 1. Select a fake wound. Determine a minor aspect of your life or work that you are ready to surrender. This could be an admission of a small mistake or a complaint about fatigue. 2. Feed it to the aggressor. When you feel pressure, do not resist. On the contrary, bend. Say, "You know, you are perhaps right. I have not been in the best shape lately." 3. Observe the reaction. As soon as the opponent begins to show condescension or aggression, record this. He has revealed his cards. Now you know his true intentions. 4. Sharp return. When he goes too far, instantly restore the status quo. Show that your weakness was merely an illusion. This causes a psychological shock in the opponent, after which he will not dare to attack for a long time. Rule: one who always seems strong evokes a desire to find his weakness. One who manages his weakness is invulnerable. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. Liam feels how the silk of his shirt cools his back. The scent of Oliver, a mixture of expensive cologne and suddenly emerged sour sweat, evokes in him an almost aesthetic pleasure. In the loft, it suddenly becomes quieter, as if all sounds were swallowed by the black hole of Oliver's failure. Liam feels like a chess player who sacrificed a pawn to deliver a checkmate in 3 moves. The cold calculation inside him pulses in rhythm with the neon lights of the city, which does not forgive mistakes. Chapter 4. Destruction of reality and radical pragmatism. Phase, collision. A country house in the Hamptons. November. The gray ocean beats against the shore, sending a sound through the windows similar to distant explosions. Inside, there is a cozy fireplace, but the warmth seems artificial. Emily stands by the window, her fingers convulsively clutching a glass. She has just discovered that Thomas, the man to whom she has trusted her finances and reputation for the last 3 years, coldly used her connections for a deal about which she was not supposed to know. Thomas, I saw the documents. Her voice trembles, but there is the steel of accusation in it. You used my signature on a power of attorney for the transfer of Vanguard shares. You promised that this account would not be touched. Thomas sits in a deep leather armchair. He does not jump up. he does not begin to justify himself. He slowly closes his book and looks at her with a light, almost fatherly compassion. "Emily." His voice sounds velvety and frighteningly calm. "You need to rest. You have again begun to confuse events because of stress." "Do not dare make me out to be insane." She throws the folder onto the table. "Here is the copy." Thomas does not even look at the papers. He stands up, approaches her, and stops at a distance that is slightly closer than comfortable. He does not look into her eyes. He looks at her lips, as if at a malfunctioning mechanism. "These documents are drafts that you yourself asked to prepare last month. Have you forgotten? We discussed this on that Friday when you were complaining about a migraine. You said, 'Thomas, make it so that I do not think about this anymore.'" He makes a pause. His voice becomes quieter. "I simply fulfilled your request. You should really check your cortisol level. Your memory is starting to fail you." Emily freezes. A shadow of doubt appears in her eyes. Was there that Friday? The migraine was there. But did I say that? Thomas records the victory. Her pupils have begun to dart. She is looking for a foothold in her memory, but I have just knocked that foothold out. Now she will struggle not with me, but with her own adequacy. I do not remember that conversation," she whispers. "That is exactly what I'm talking about." Thomas gently takes her by the elbow and leads her away from the window. "Let us burn these papers. They only upset you. You are simply tired of responsibility. Allow me to take this burden." He takes the folder and, without looking, throws it into the fireplace. Emily watches as the flame devours the evidence of her correctness, and she feels a strange relief. She is no longer a victim of deception. She is simply a tired woman who is being cared for. Reality was rewritten in 3 minutes. 2. Phase, psychological X-ray. Thomas applied gaslighting of the highest order, coupled with radical pragmatism. Cognitive distortion. When a person encounters an absolutely confident denial of an obvious fact from a significant individual, his brain falls into a state of heavy dissonance. To avoid a psychological collapse, "I am going insane," the brain chooses the most safe version of reality. Thomas offered her the role of tired and cared for, which is psychologically more pleasant than the role of betrayed and deceived. False memory. The brain does not record events like a video camera. It is a reconstruction. It is sufficient to add a few truthful details, migraine, Friday, so that the person draws in the rest of the lie as part of his memory. Neurochemistry. At the moment of the attack, Emily experiences a spike of adrenaline. Thomas, maintaining a low timbre and calmness, activates her parasympathetic system, a signal of safety. This contrast forces her to subconsciously reach for him as a source of stability, even if he is the source of the threat. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. In 1951, Solomon Asch conducted a classic experiment on conformity. A subject was shown lines of different lengths and asked to find the identical ones. However, in the group, there were planted actors who unanimously named a deliberately incorrect answer. The result was shocking. 75% of participants agreed with the group at least once, denying the obvious evidence of their senses. Thomas became for Emily such a group in one person. His authority and unshakable confidence replaced objective reality for her. Man is a social animal, and the fear of being wrong or insane in solitude is stronger than loyalty to facts. 4. Phase, counterstrike. Your task is to master lesson number 4. Reality is what you transmit with the greatest confidence. Instructions for application. One refusal of defense. Never justify yourself. If you are caught in a lie or a mistake, do not explain why. Instead, attack the variability of the opponent to perceive information. Use phrases, "Your interpretation of events causes concern." You are again seeing something that is not there. 2. Detailing the lie. Add small, insignificant, truthful details, smells, weather, background sounds, into your version of reality. This creates an effect of presence and forces the opponent's brain to believe in the false construction. 3. Radical pragmatism. Evaluate any action not from the point of view of truth or morality, but from the point of view of the result. If a lie strengthens your position and calms the opponent, it is the correct action. Rule. In a conflict, it is not the one who has the truth on his side who wins, but the one who forces the other to doubt his own eyes. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. Thomas feels the smell of burnt paper and pungent printer ink. This is the smell of his victory. He senses the soft fabric of Emily's jacket under his fingers. Her pulse under his hand is rapid, like that of a trapped bird. In the room, it becomes quieter. Only the crackling of wood in the fireplace emphasizes his control over the space. He looks at the ashes and sees in them not destroyed documents, but the foundation of his new, unshakable power. Chapter 5. Will to Power and the Triumph of Amor Fati. 1. Phase. Collision. A glass office on the 81st floor of a skyscraper in Chicago. Outside the window, a blizzard rages, erasing the boundaries between heaven and earth. Inside is a boardroom where the fate of a merger between two major media holdings is being decided. The atmosphere is electrified to the limit. Vance, the chief executive officer, sits at the head of the table. Against him is a coalition of shareholders led by Henry, an aggressive and experienced raider who came to displace Vance. Henry finishes his speech. He shouts, spits saliva, shakes reports of losses. He uses all the classic methods of suppression. A loud voice looming over the table, open aggression. "You are finished, Vance." Henry strikes the polished wood with his palm. "Your strategy has failed. Your people are fleeing. You are a bankrupt who is trying to save face. Let us vote." Vance slowly leans back in his chair. He does not defend himself. He does not look at the reports. His face expresses not anger and not fear, but a deep, almost mystical satisfaction. He smiles, not with that false smile of a manager, but with the predatory grin of a person who loves chaos. "Henry." Vance's voice sounds surprisingly soft, almost intimate. "You are trying so hard to prove my worthlessness that you forgot one detail." He slowly stands up, and at that moment it seems that the ceiling in the room is lowering. "You are fighting for money, and I am fighting for the opportunity to test how strong this system is." Vance analyzes. His pupils are constricted. He is in survival mode. His anger is a cry for help. He is afraid that I am not afraid. I accept this crisis as a gift. My energy now is not resistance. It is the absorption of his aggression. "You are scared, Henry," Vance continues, walking around the table and stopping directly behind the back of his opponent. "You are afraid that I will not surrender, and you are right to be afraid. Because for me, this failure is not the end. It is a purification. I love this chaos. I am this chaos." Vance places his hand on Henry's shoulder. Henry flinches, but he cannot shake off the hand. There is so much confidence in this gesture that his body obeys instinctively. "Vote," Vance whispers in his ear. "But remember, even if you win today, you will leave here as my creation. You will live with the realization that I allowed you to do this." Dead silence falls in the room. The shareholders look at each other. The power emanating from Vance is so absolute that Henry, who had just owned the situation, suddenly seems like a pathetic hysteric. The vote fails. People do not want to follow the one who is right according to the figures. They want to follow the one who is stronger in spirit. 2. Phase, psychological X-ray. Vance demonstrated the concept of amor fati, love of fate, and the will to power. Radical acceptance. Most people spend 90% of their energy on resisting reality, fear of losing, attempts to hide mistakes. Vance, however, accepts any outcome as desired. When you stop fearing defeat, you deprive the opponent of his main weapon. Your aura becomes impenetrable because you have no pain points. Transcendent dominance. Vance does not argue with Henry on the level of logic, figures, reports. He translates the conflict to a metaphysical level. He asserts that he is the source of the rules. In psychology, this is called a high internal locus of control, brought to an absolute. The biology of flow. Unlike Henry, whose body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, a stress reaction, Vance is in a state of combat trance. He has high levels of testosterone and dopamine with low cortisol. This state is read by those around on a subconscious level as a sign of a superior individual, a leader whom it is safe to follow, even into an abyss. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. In 1961, Stanley Milgram conducted his famous experiment on obedience. Ordinary people agreed to deliver lethal electric shocks to strangers only because a person in a white coat, an authority, told them. The experiment requires that you continue. Why did they obey? Because the authority transmitted absolute confidence in his correctness and took responsibility for reality. Vance, in our example, became this person in a white coat. His aura of power forced the shareholders to doubt Henry's logic and submit to the irrational but powerful will of Vance. People subconsciously seek someone who will relieve them of the burden of choice and indicate the path, even if this path leads into a storm. 4. Phase, counter-strike. Your task is to master lesson number 5. Become the son of your own system. Instructions for transformation. 1. Practice. Amor fati. In any crisis situation, instead of the question, "Why is this happening to me?" say, "I wanted this." Imagine that the current chaos is a script that you yourself wrote for your training. This instantly changes your posture, voice, and gaze. 2. Seizing the moral high ground. In an argument, do not justify yourself. Translate the discussion from facts to principles and values. Instead of, "I did not steal the money," say, "Your pettiness and obsession with figures prevent you from seeing the scale of my strategy." 3. Invulnerability through openness. If you have a weakness, do not hide it. Display it as a trophy. "Yes, I lost this round, and it was magnificent. Now I know how you attack." This disarms any aggressor. Rule: your aura is not what you do. It is how strongly you believe that the world revolves around your axis. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. Vance feels the cold air bursting in through the ventilation system, but inside him is the heat of a nuclear reactor. He feels the texture of the fabric of his suit, the weight of the watch on his wrist, the pulsation of blood in his temples. The noise of the blizzard outside the window seems to him like applause. He is not simply in the room. He is this room. Every breath of Henry, every frightened look of a shareholder. All these are parts of his personal orchestra. He is calm. He is absolute. He won even before he entered this hall. Final lesson. The world has not become kinder. It has remained the same ruthless machine where cortisol and dopamine dictate the hierarchy, and weakness is punished by immediate absorption. But now you know the access code to this machine. You have learned to manage silence as a sniper manages breathing. You have learned to turn your vulnerability into a trap and your will into an objective reality for those around you. Most people will spend the rest of their days in a safe herd, exchanging false smiles and shuddering at the slightest manifestation of true power. They are statistical noise. You are a constant. Your new aura is not a cloak that can be taken off. It is your new skin. It is cold, dense, and absolutely impenetrable to the manipulations of others. From this moment, every step you take, every breath, and every second of silence is an act of dominance. Not because you want to prove your strength, but because you no longer recognize any other power over yourself except your own. Lesson number 6. The final truth. In the food chain, there is no place for good guys. There are only those who establish the rules and those who follow them. Your choice was made at the moment you finished reading to the end. Sensory finale. You stand before the mirror. The room is perfectly quiet. You hear only the steady, frighteningly calm rhythm of your own heart. The air seems crystal clear, devoid of the sense of human fuss. You look at your reflection and you do not see fear there, nor hope, nor doubts. Only pure, sharpened will. The lights of the city outside the window no longer seem distant and unreachable. They are merely decorations in a play that you are now writing. You turn off the light, and the darkness does not frighten you. Darkness is your element. You are a predator who has finally returned home. Knowledge of the mechanisms of the psyche is your main freedom. Subscribe to explore the hidden facets of human behavior together. And be sure to write in the comments which psychological pattern or strategy we shall analyze next time. Let us seek the truth together.